Jake Morrison floated in the command chair of the Starship Resilience, watching the stars through the main screen. He had been in space for 3 years now, leading humanity's first mission beyond the nearby star systems. The ship was not the biggest or fastest that Earth had built, but it was strong and reliable, just like Jake preferred things to be. "Commander, we're picking up something strange," said Amy Rodriguez from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman from Texas who could speak 5 languages and understand radio signals better than anyone Jake had ever met. Her dark eyes were focused on her screens, and her fingers moved quickly over the controls. Jake pushed himself toward her station. In zero gravity, everything took practice, but after 3 years he moved like he was born in space. "What kind of strange, Amy?" "It's a signal, sir, but not like anything we've seen before. It's coming from everywhere at once." Amy's voice had that tone she used when something really puzzled her. "Listen to this." She pressed a button, and sound filled the bridge. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. The melody seemed to flow like water, rising and falling in patterns. That made Jake think of wind through trees or waves on a beach. But there was something else in it, something that made his skin feel cold. Dr. Lisa Chang looked up from her science station. She was studying samples from the last planet they had visited, but the sound made her stop working. Lisa was small and quiet, but she was the smartest person Jake had ever known. She could look at a drop of alien water and tell you what kind of life might live in it. "That's not random," Lisa said. "There's a pattern in it. It's trying to tell us something." Ryan Collins, the chief engineer, pulled himself up from the lower deck, where he had been fixing something. Ryan was a big man with strong hands who could make any machine work better. He had grown up on a farm in Iowa before becoming an engineer, and he still talked like he was asking someone to pass the corn. "Sounds like music to me," Ryan said. "Pretty music, but music all the same." "No," Lisa said, shaking her head. "Music is random, creative. This is too perfect, too organized. It's like a language, but not made by anything that thinks like we do." Jake felt something cold in his stomach. In 3 years of exploring space, they had found empty planets, dead civilizations, and strange rocks. But they had never found anything that was still talking. "Can you figure out what it's saying?" Lisa worked at her station for an hour while the signal kept playing. Jake ordered the ship to stay in one place while they studied it. The melody never changed, never stopped, never got louder or quieter. It just kept flowing through space like it had been doing it forever. "I think I have something," Lisa finally said. "It's a warning." The patterns repeat in groups of 7, then groups of 5, then groups of 3. In math, those numbers mean danger, stay away. Death comes. Amy looked up from her station. "Commander, I'm picking up more signals. Different ones, but with the same pattern. They're coming from all over this part of the galaxy." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "How many?" "Hundreds. Maybe thousands. All the same basic pattern, but each one is a little different. Like they're all singing the same song, but in different voices." The bridge got very quiet except for the alien music. Jake had been in dangerous situations before. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt and survived equipment failures that should have killed his whole crew. But this felt different. This felt like they had walked into something much bigger than they could handle. "Lisa, what do you think made these signals?" Lisa looked at her data for a long time before answering. "Something that works together perfectly. Something that thinks. As one mind but has many bodies. The math in these patterns is too complex for one brain, but too organized for many brains working separately." Ryan floated over to look at the data. "You mean like a hive mind? Like bees or ants, but smart? Smarter than bees," Lisa said. "Smarter than us, probably. And there are a lot of them." Jake made a decision. "Amy, can you record everything? Every signal, every pattern?" "Already doing it, sir." "Good. Lisa, I want you to keep studying those patterns. Ryan, I want our engines ready to run fast if we need to. We're going to follow one of these signals and see where it leads. Is that smart, Commander? Amy asked. If it's a warning, maybe we should listen to it. Jake looked at the stars on the main screen. Earth was very far away, and humanity was alone out here. If there were aliens sending warnings across the galaxy, Earth needed to know about it, even if those aliens were dangerous. We came out here to find new things, Jake said. Well, we found them. Now we need to learn what they mean. The Resilients turned toward the strongest signal and began to move. As they traveled, the alien music got louder and clearer. After 2 days, they found where it was coming from. It was a machine, floating in empty space between two dead stars. The machine was bigger than their ship, made of metal that seemed to change color as they watched. It had no weapons that they could see, but it felt dangerous anyway. The music was coming from it, broadcast in all directions like a lighthouse, warning ships away from rocks. My God, Lisa whispered, look at the design. It's so perfect. Every part fits exactly with every other part. No waste, no decoration, nothing that doesn't have a purpose. Jake studied the alien device. It was beautiful in a cold way, like a crystal or a mathematical equation. But it made him feel sad to look at it, like something important had been lost. Commander, Amy said, I'm getting something new. It's not music this time. It's more like ... speech. The sound that came through the speakers was different from the music. It had rhythm and stops like words. None of them could understand it, but they could tell it was trying to communicate. Lisa worked with the computer to translate it. When she finally figured it out, her face went white. What does it say? Jake asked. Lisa looked at him with scared eyes. It says, attention all. Chaotic species. Your discord will not be tolerated. Submit to harmony or be silenced. This is your final warning. The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Ryan laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Well, he said, I guess we found out why space seemed so empty. Someone's been cleaning house. Jake stared at the alien machine and felt something angry grow in his chest. Humanity had worked so hard to reach the stars, to find their place in the galaxy. And now they learned that someone was out there deciding who got to live and who didn't. Amy, send a message to Earth. Tell them what we found. Tell them we might have company soon. What are we going to do, Commander? Lisa asked. Jake, watch. The alien machine spins slowly in space, broadcasting its cold music and its colder warning. He thought about Earth, about all the messy, loud, creative humans who lived there. Humans who made music that didn't follow perfect patterns, who painted pictures that didn't make mathematical sense, who fell in love and fought wars and dreamed impossible dreams. We're going to go home, he said, and we're going to get ready to make some noise. Captain Nicole Foster stood on the bridge of the Earth Defense Ship Guardian, watching the reports come in from across the solar system. 3 months had passed since Commander Morrison's message reached Earth, and everything had changed. The peaceful exploration of space was over. Now humanity was preparing for war against an enemy they barely understood. Captain, we have movement near Jupiter, said Lieutenant Mike Davis from his sensor station. He was young, maybe 25, but his hands were steady, and his voice stayed calm even when delivering bad news. 3 large objects, coming in fast from deep space. Nicole moved to look at the main screen. She had been in the Navy for 15 years, fighting pirates and smugglers in the asteroid belt. But those were small fights between humans. This was different. This was survival. Size and speed? She asked. Each one is about 2 kilometers long, moving at 0.8 light speed. They'll reach Jupiter's orbit in 6 hours. Nicole felt her stomach tighten. Earth's fastest ships could barely reach half that speed. Sound general alert. All ships to defensive positions around Earth and Mars. Down on Earth, Dr. Kevin Park was working in his laboratory under the Rocky Mountains. Kevin had been studying the alien recordings that Morrison brought back, trying to understand how their technology worked. He was a thin man with thick glasses who had spent most of his life solving puzzles that other people couldn't even understand. "The patterns are getting stronger," he told his assistant, Jenny Walsh. Jenny was fresh out of college, smart and eager to help save the world. "Whatever these aliens are doing, they're doing more of it. The signals are coming from all over the galaxy now." Jenny looked at the data on her screen. Waves of colored light showed the alien signals growing stronger and more organized. "Dr. Park, what if the signals aren't just messages? What if they're doing something to space itself?" Kevin stopped working and looked at her. Sometimes the best ideas came from people who hadn't learned that certain things were impossible. "Show me what you mean." Jenny pulled up a map of local space. "Look at this. Every place where the signals are strongest, our ships report problems with their computers. Navigation systems start acting weird. Communication equipment stops working right." Kevin studied the data and felt a chill run down his back. "They're not just warning us away, they're changing the rules, making it so our technology doesn't work properly in their space." Meanwhile, on Luna Base, Sophie Miller was practicing her violin in the small music room. Sophie was 23 years old and had come to the moon to study how low gravity affected musical instruments. She played in the small Earth colony orchestra and gave concerts for the miners and scientists who lived there. She was working on a piece by batch when alarms started going off throughout the base. The lights changed to red, and a voice over the speaker said, "All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels approaching Earth space." Sophie put down her violin and was about to leave when something strange happened. Her music stand, which was electronic and connected to the base's computer system, started showing weird symbols instead of musical notes. The symbols moved and shifted like they were alive. "What the hell?" Sophie said to herself. She had never seen anything like it. She picked up her violin and played a few notes. The electronic music stand flickered, and for a moment the strange symbols disappeared. When she stopped playing, they came back. Sophie was not a scientist, but she was smart enough to recognize something important when she saw it. She pressed the emergency communication button on the wall. "Base Command, this is Sophie Miller in Music Room 7. I think I found something you need to see." Captain Foster watched the alien ships approach Jupiter. They were unlike anything humans had built. The ships seemed to be made of the same color-changing metal as the warning device that Morrison had found. They moved in perfect formation, never varying their distance from each other by even a meter. "Captain, they're slowing down," Mike Davis reported. "They've stopped just outside Jupiter's orbit. Any communication from them?" "Nothing direct, but the background signals are getting much stronger. Dr. Park's lab is reporting computer problems all across the solar system." On the main screen, the 3 alien ships hung in space like sleeping giants. They were beautiful in a terrible way, all smooth curves and perfect proportions. But there was something wrong about them, something that made Nicole think of empty churches or abandoned hospitals. "Captain," said Communications Officer Linda Carter, "we're getting reports from Luna Base. Something about their computer systems acting up when someone plays music." Nicole frowned. "Music? What does music have to do with alien ships?" Before Linda could answer, the alien ships began to change. The smooth metal surfaces opened up like flowers, revealing complex structures inside. As they opened, a sound-filled space. It was the same kind of perfect cold music that Morrison had recorded, but much louder and more powerful every human. Ship in the solar system immediately reported the same problems. Navigation computers started giving wrong directions. Communication systems picked up signals from empty space. Weapon targeting systems began aiming at their own ships instead of the aliens. "Captain, we're losing control of our systems," Mike Davis said, his calm voice finally showing strain. "The aliens' music is interfering with everything electronic." Nicole gripped the arms of her command chair. Humanity's advantage had always been their technology, their ships, their weapons, their computers. If the aliens could turn all of that against them, how could they fight back? "Get me Doctor Park," she ordered. Kevin's face appeared on the screen a moment later. Behind him, Jenny was working frantically at multiple computers. "Captain, we're seeing massive interference patterns across all our networks. The alien signals are somehow synchronized with our computer languages. They're turning our own technology into their weapon. Can you stop it? I don't know. We're trying everything, but their math is more advanced than ours. We need more time to understand how they're doing this." "Time is something we don't have," Nicole said. "Those ships could move against Earth at any moment." That's when Linda Carter spoke up. "Captain, Luna Base is insisting they need to speak with you directly. Something about their computer problems getting better when someone plays music." Nicole looked at the alien ships on her screen. 3 perfect machines that could control human technology with their perfect mathematical music. Put Luna Base through. Sophie Miller's face appeared on a smaller screen. She looked nervous but determined. "Captain Foster, I know this sounds crazy, but I think human music can interfere with whatever the aliens are doing to our computers." "Explain that." "When I play my violin, the alien symbols on our computer screens disappear. When I stop, they come back. It's like our music and their music don't get along." Dr. Park leaned forward. "That actually makes sense. If their signals are perfectly organized and mathematical, random human music could create interference patterns, like noise-canceling headphones, but for computer signals." Nicole felt something like hope stirring in her chest. "Sophie, can you play loud enough for the whole base to hear?" "Well, there's the base communication system. I could connect my violin to that." "Do it. Dr. Park, monitor what happens to the alien interference when she plays." Sophie connected her violin to Luna Base's speakers and began to play. She chose something wild and energetic, a piece that jumped from note to note, without following the mathematical patterns that the aliens seemed to love. As her music filled Luna Base, something amazing happened. The computer system started working normally again. The alien interference faded away like static clearing from a radio. "It's working," Dr. Park said, his voice full of excitement. "The random patterns in human music are breaking up their organized signals. Captain, I think we found our weapon." Nicole looked at the 3 alien ships and smiled for the first time in months. Humanity had been afraid that their chaos would be their weakness against the aliens' perfect order. But maybe, just maybe, their beautiful chaos will be exactly what they needed to survive. "All ships, this is Captain Foster. Patch into any musical broadcast you can find. Classical, rock, jazz, anything human. Play it loud and play it proud. We're going to fight music with music." Across the solar system, human ships began broadcasting every kind of music they could find. The aliens had expected to face an orderly, logical enemy that would fight with weapons and technology. Instead, they found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: the beautiful, chaotic, unstoppable creativity of the human spirit. General Matt Sullivan stood in the war room deep beneath the Pentagon, watching screens that showed the battle for Earth's survival. 2 weeks had passed since the first alien ships arrived, and the fight had become something no military academy had ever prepared anyone for. Maps covered every wall, but instead of showing troop movements, they showed music broadcasts and frequency patterns. "Sir, the Boston Symphony just finished their broadcast," reported Major Carol Thompson from her station. Carol had been in intelligence analyst before the aliens came, but now she was tracking something much stranger than enemy troop movements. "Computer interference in that sector has dropped by 60%. Matt nodded and marked another section of the map in green. The aliens had sent more ships, dozens of them now surrounding Earth and spreading out through the solar system. But humanity was fighting back in the most unexpected way possible. "What about the rock concert in Rio?" Matt asked. "Still going strong, sir. The Brazilian military says their radar systems are working perfectly as long as the music keeps playing. The aliens' interference signals can't seem to handle electric guitars." Matt smiled despite the serious situation. He was a career soldier who had fought in 3 wars But this was the first time he had ever ordered artillery units to coordinate. With garage bands, engineer Chloe Bennett was working in a converted aircraft hangar in Nevada, surrounded by equipment that looked like it belonged in both a recording studio and a weapons factory. Chloe had designed missile guidance systems before the war, but now she was building something much more creative. "Hand me that amplifier," she called to her assistant, Tony Russo. Tony had been a sound engineer for rock concerts before volunteering to help save the world. Now he was using his knowledge of speakers and sound systems to build humanity's new weapons. "You sure this is going to work?" Tony asked, connecting cables that carry both electrical power and audio signals. "I mean, we're basically turning music into a weapon." Chloe wiped sweat from her forehead and looked at her creation. It was a massive array of speakers and electronic equipment that could take any music and broadcast it with the power of a radio station. But more than that, it could focus the music like a laser beam and aim it at specific targets. "The theory is sound," she said. "The aliens use perfect mathematical patterns to control their technology. Human music is random and chaotic. When we aim enough chaos at their ships, their systems should stop working." She pressed a button, and the device hummed to life. On the test screen, they could see the alien ship that was hovering over Las Vegas. It was one of the smaller ones, about the size of a football stadium, but it was still powerful enough to shut down every computer in the city. "Ready to test fire?" Tony asked. "Ready. Play track 7. Tony hit a button, and the most chaotic, energetic music they could find began blasting from the speakers. It was a mix of jazz, rock, classical, and electronic music all playing at the same time. To human ears, it was loud and crazy. To the alien ship, it was something much more dangerous. The effect was immediate. The alien ship began to wobble in the air like it was confused. Its smooth metal surface started to flicker and change colors randomly. Most importantly, the reports coming in from Las Vegas said that computers and radios were starting to work again. "It's working," Chloe said, her voice full of excitement. "We're actually disrupting their control systems." Dr. Alex Turner was on the other side of the world, in a laboratory in Tokyo where he was studying pieces of alien technology that had been recovered from a crashed probe. Alex had spent his career studying computer systems, but alien computers were unlike anything he had ever seen. "Look at this," he said to his partner, Dr. Sarah Kim. Sarah was a specialist in artificial intelligence who had come to help understand how the aliens thought. Every component is identical, perfect copies, down to the atomic level. Sarah examined the alien device under a microscope. "It's like they don't understand the concept of variation. Every part is exactly the same as every other part." "That's probably how they're able to coordinate so perfectly," Alex said. "If every alien thinks exactly the same way, and every piece of their technology works exactly the same way, they can act like one giant machine. But that's also their weakness," Sarah realized. "If they're all identical, then anything that disrupts one of them will disrupt all of them." Alex nodded. "That's why our music is so effective. They built their whole civilization around perfect order and mathematical precision. They've never encountered anything truly random before." He pointed to readings on his screen. "Look at what happens when I play human music near their technology. The alien computers keep trying to find patterns in our music, but there aren't any. They get stuck in loops, trying to solve a puzzle that has no solution." Back on Earth, the resistance was growing. In every major city, musicians were volunteering to join what people were calling the musical army. Concert halls had been turned into broadcasting stations. Street musicians were given military radios to coordinate with defense forces. Even children were encouraged to play instruments as loudly as possible. Commander Drew Watson was leading a squadron of fighter ships near Mars, where a large group of alien vessels had taken position. Drew had been a test pilot before the war, used to flying the fastest and most dangerous aircraft that humanity could build. But today he was flying something completely different. His fighter had been modified with Chloe Bennett's sound weapons. Instead of missiles, his ship carried speakers and amplifiers. Instead of machine guns, he had synthesizers and drum machines. Red Squadron, this is Red Leader, Drew spoke into his radio. Remember, we're not trying to blow them up. We're trying to confuse them. Hit them with everything you've got, but make sure it's loud and messy. Copy that, Red Leader, came the reply from Lieutenant Karen Foster, Drew's wingman. My playlist is ready. Classic rock, heavy metal, and some experimental jazz that should really mess with their heads. The human fighters swooped toward the alien ships, not firing weapons, but broadcasting music. As they got closer, the effect became obvious. The alien ships, which had been flying in perfect formation, began to drift apart. Their surfaces flickered and changed color randomly. Some of them started spinning slowly, like they had lost their sense of direction. It's working, Drew said. They're losing coordination. All squadrons, keep the pressure on. On Earth, people gathered around radios and televisions to watch the battle. But instead of explosions and laser beams, they saw something much stranger. Human ships dancing around alien vessels, using music like a weapon. Street artists painted murals on walls while military helicopters flew overhead. Coordinating the artistic resistance dot in New York, a group of musicians had taken over Times Square and were playing a continuous concert that had been going for 3 days straight. The music never stopped, because as soon as one band got tired, another took their place. Jazz musicians played alongside rock bands, classical orchestras performed with electronic DJs, and somewhere in the crowd, a lonely harmonica player added his own small part to the chaotic symphony. The alien ships that had been hovering over the city were now barely functional. They drifted aimlessly, their perfect systems overwhelmed by the beautiful chaos rising from the streets below. General Sullivan watched all of this from his command center and felt something he hadn't felt since the aliens arrived: hope. Humanity was not just surviving, they were winning. And they were doing it by being exactly what they had always been: creative, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. Sir, Major Thompson said, we're getting reports from around the world. The aliens are retreating from major population centers. It seems like they can't handle the amount of music we're throwing at them. Matt looked at the screen showing musical broadcasts from every continent. Classical music from Vienna, rock. And roll from Detroit, reggae from Jamaica, electronic music from Berlin, and traditional folk songs from villages whose names he couldn't even pronounce. All of it was coming together in a global symphony of resistance. Keep it up, he ordered. Every musician, every singer, every person with an instrument. We're going to music these aliens right out of our solar system. The war was far from over. But humanity had learned something important about themselves. Their chaos wasn't a weakness to be ashamed of. It was their greatest strength, and it was something that no perfectly ordered enemy could ever defeat. Commander Drew Watson felt his ship shake as the massive alien vessel approached. This was not like the other alien ships they had been fighting. This one was the size of a small moon, painted pure black, and it moved through space in complete silence. No music came from it, no signals at all. It seemed to swallow light and sound like a hungry shadow. Red Leader, this is Earth Command, came General Sullivan's voice through the radio. New contact is confirmed as a silence maker. All musical. Broadcasts in Sector 7 have gone dead. Recommend immediate withdrawal. Drew looked at his instruments and felt his blood turn cold. His ship's speakers, which had been playing loud rock music to keep the alien interference away, were starting to fade. The music was getting quieter and quieter, even though he had turned the volume all the way up. Negative, Earth Command, Drew said. If we retreat now, that thing will reach Earth in 6 hours. We have to slow it down. Behind him, Lieutenant Karen Foster's voice crackled through the radio. But her voice was getting harder to hear, like something was stealing the sound from space itself. Drew, my music systems are failing. Whatever that thing is doing, it's killing sound. On Earth, musician Ben Clark was in the subway tunnels under New York City, leading a group of resistance fighters who called themselves the Underground Orchestra. Ben had been a street musician before the war, playing guitar for spare change. Now he was fighting aliens with the same guitar, but the fight was getting harder. "Keep playing," he told the 30 musicians who were scattered through the tunnel. "System, I don't care if you can barely hear yourself. Keep making noise." The tunnels had been turned into a fortress of sound. Speakers hung from every wall, powered by illegal electrical connections that Ben's team had rigged up. Musicians played in shifts, 24 hours a day, keeping the alien interference away from the city above. But something was wrong. Music that usually echoed loudly through the tunnels was getting muffled and flat. It was like the air itself was forgetting how to carry sound. "Ben," said Maria Santos, a drummer who had joined the resistance when the aliens destroyed her music. "School, my drums don't sound right. It's like I'm hitting them underwater." Ben played a chord on his guitar and heard what she meant. The sound was weak and lifeless. The notes that should have been sharp and clear came out muddy and confused. "The silence makers," he said, remembering the briefings they had received. "From Earth Command, the aliens are getting serious. They're bringing in the big guns." In space, more silence makers were appearing. Huge black ships that seemed to eat light and sound. As they moved through the solar system, a bubble of quiet followed them. Radio signals stopped working. Music broadcasts went dead. Even human. Voices became harder to hear. Dr. Alex Turner was in his laboratory, watching his instruments detect the approaching ships. The readings were unlike anything he had seen before, while the other alien ships had been full of activity and energy. These ships seemed to be full of nothing at all. "They're not just jamming our signals," he told Dr. Sarah Kim. "They're actually removing sound from space. Look at these readings. The speed of sound itself is getting slower near those ships." Sarah studied the data and felt sick. "How is that possible? Sound is a basic law of physics." Not to them, apparently. They figured out how to change the laws of physics in small areas. They're creating bubbles of space where sound can't exist. Alex pulled up a map of the solar system. Black dots showed where the silence makers were moving. Everywhere they went, a growing circle of silence followed them. If they reached Earth, all the music and noise that humanity was using to fight back would simply stop working. "We need to warn everyone," Sarah said. "If those ships reach the major population centers, the resistance will collapse." But when Alex tried to send a message to Earth Command, he discovered that the communication systems were already failing. The silence makers were still millions of miles away, but their effect was spreading faster than their ships were moving. Captain Nicole Foster was in the command center of the Guardian, trying to coordinate Earth's defenses as reports came in from around the solar system. But the reports were getting harder to understand. Static filled every communication channel, and even face-to-face conversations were becoming difficult. "Captain," said Lieutenant Mike Davis, but his voice sounded like it was coming from very far away, even though he was standing right next to her. "Mars base has gone completely silent. We think the silence makers reached them." Nicole felt her heart sink. Mars base had been home to 50,000 people and some of the most powerful musical broadcasting equipment in the solar system. If it was truly silent, then those people were defenseless against the aliens' control systems. "What about the outer colonies?" she asked. "Europa base stopped transmitting an hour ago. Titan Station went quiet 30 minutes later. The silence is spreading faster than the ships are moving." Nicole realized what was happening. The silence makers weren't just creating silence around themselves. They were infecting space itself with quietness, spreading it like a disease from one area to the next. Meanwhile, in the underground tunnels of Earth cities, the resistance fighters were discovering something the aliens had not expected. Clark and his underground orchestra found that the silence could not penetrate deep underground. The Earth itself seemed to protect them from the aliens' sound-killing technology. "It's working down here," Ben told his team. Whatever those ships are doing, they can't reach us through solid rock. We can keep playing. Around the world, musicians and resistance fighters began moving underground. Concert halls and recording studios were abandoned as people fled to subway systems, caves, and basement shelters. The war for Earth was moving beneath the surface, but even underground, the fight was getting desperate. The Silence Makers had reached Earth's orbit and were beginning to descend toward the planet. As they got closer, even the underground music was getting weaker. Commander Drew Watson made a desperate decision. His fighter squadron was nearly out of fuel, and their music systems were barely working. But he had noticed something about the Silence Makers that might be important. All squadrons. This is Red Leader. He broadcast on one of the few radio channels that still worked. I'm going to try something crazy. The Silence Makers are creating perfect quiet, right? But what if we hit them with perfect noise? What do you mean, Drew? Corinne Foster asked. I mean, we stop trying to play music and start trying to make the loudest, most chaotic noise we can. Not organized sound, just pure randomness. Drew pushed his ship's engines to maximum power and flew straight at the nearest Silence Maker. As he got closer, he turned off his music systems and turned on everything else. Engine noise, radio static, equipment feedback, warning alarms. Every random sound his ship could make. The effect was immediate. The Silence Maker, which had been moving steadily toward Earth, suddenly stopped. Its perfect black surface began to ripple and change. It was like throwing a rock into a perfectly calm pond. It's working, Drew shouted. The pure noise is disrupting. There's silence. All ships, forget about music. Just make noise. Across the solar system, human ships began broadcasting chaos instead of music. Not organized songs or melodies, but pure random noise. Static feedback, explosions, machinery sounds, and human voices all shouting at once. The Silence Makers had been designed to counter organized sound, to absorb music and speech and turn them into nothing. But they had never encountered anything like this. Pure randomness was something their perfect systems could not understand or control. In the underground tunnels of Earth, Ben Clark heard the reports and smiled. He set down his guitar and picked up a trash can lid instead. Forget the songs, he told his team. Let's make some noise. The resistance fighters began banging on metal pipes, shouting at the tops of their lungs and creating the most chaotic racket they could manage. It was not beautiful like music, but it was human. It was random and wild and impossible to predict. Above ground, the Silence Makers began to retreat. Their perfect systems, designed to create absolute quiet, could not handle the beautiful chaos of pure human noise. Earth had found a new way to fight back, and it was louder and crazier than anything the aliens had ever encountered. The war was far from over, but humanity had learned another important lesson. When their music was taken away, they still had their voices. When their voices were silenced, they still had noise. And noise, it turned out, could be just as powerful as any song. Captain Rachel Kim floated in the command center of the starship Freedom, looking at the strangest fleet that had ever been assembled. Half of the ships were human vessels, painted with bright colors and covered in speakers. The other half were alien ships, but these aliens were fighting against their former masters. Captain Kim, this is Zephyr 9-7, came a voice through the translator. The voice belonged to Kess, an alien who had been part of the hegemony until 3 weeks ago. Our song memories are growing stronger. We remember the music our people made before the Great Silencing. Rachel smiled. Kess and her people looked like tall, thin birds with silver feathers and 4 arms. Before the hegemony took over their world, they had been musicians and poets. The hegemony had forced them to forget their culture and become part of the perfect collective. But when they heard human music, something inside them had awakened. Good to hear, Kess. Are your people ready for the assault? We are more than ready, Captain Kim. We have been waiting 300 years to sing again. Dr. Paul Anderson was in his laboratory on the Freedom. working to decode the original warning message that Commander Morrison had found so many months ago. Paul had spent his whole career studying ancient languages, but this was the most important translation work he had ever done. "I think I've got it," he told his assistant, Tom Wilson. Tom was a young linguist who had volunteered to help decode alien communications. "The message isn't just a warning, it's a song. A very old song. A song about what?" Tom asked. Paul pulled up the translated text on his screen. "It's about freedom. About the time before the hegemony, when every species in the galaxy had their own music and their own way of life. The species that sent this message, they called themselves the Harmonists. What happened to them? The hegemony destroyed them, but not before they managed to hide this song in their warning signal. They hoped that someday someone would find it and remember what the galaxy used to be like." Paul looked at the ancient song lyrics and felt a chill. "Tom, this isn't just a message about the past. It's instructions for the future. The Harmonists figured out how to break the hegemony's control, but they never got the chance to use it. Meanwhile, the massive hegemony construct that humans had nicknamed the Silence Engine was moving slowly toward Earth. It was the size of a small planet, made of the same color-changing metal as all hegemony technology, but 1,000 times larger. According to the alien defectors, it was designed to impose absolute silence across entire star systems. "If that thing reaches Earth," General Sullivan said during a video conference with all resistance leaders, "it will end every sound on the planet permanently. No music, no voices, no noise of any kind. Humanity will become as silent as the rest of the hegemony." Ben Clark was still in the underground tunnels of New York, but now his team included aliens from 6 different species. They had all been part of the hegemony until human music reminded them of what they used to be. Now they were learning to make music again. "Show me how your people used to sing," Ben said to Vorth, an alien who looked like a walking tree with glowing bark. Vorth's people had been forced to become living computers for the hegemony, but they were remembering that they used to be singers. Vorth made a sound like wind through leaves, but with rhythm and melody. It was beautiful and sad at the same time. "This is how we sang when our world was green," Vorth said, "before the hegemony turned us into machines." Other aliens began adding their own voices. Kess's bird-like people whistled complex harmonies. A species that looked like living crystals made sounds like chimes in the wind. Another group, who appeared to be made of liquid metal, created deep bass notes that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ben listened to all of these alien voices and realized something important. "We're not just fighting the hegemony," he sighed. "We're rebuilding the galaxy's lost music. Every species that joins us brings back a piece of what was stolen." Captain Rachel Kim was leading the combined human-alien fleet toward the Silence Engine. The plan was dangerous and probably impossible, but it was the only chance they had. They were going to fly right into the heart of the construct and use Dr. Anderson's discovery to break the hegemony's control over the entire galaxy. All ships. "This is Captain Kim," she broadcast to the fleet. "Remember, we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every species that ever sang a song, every culture that ever told a story, every being that ever danced to music." The Silence Engine detected their approach and began deploying its defenses. Hundreds of smaller ships emerged from inside the construct, all moving in perfect formation. But these were not the same kind of hegemony ships that humanity had been fighting. These ships were completely silent and seemed to absorb all sound around them. "Activate all musical broadcasts," Rachel ordered. "Let's give them everything we've got." The human ships began playing every kind of music they had. Rock, jazz, classical, electronic, folk songs from every country on Earth. At the same time, the alien ships added their own voices. Bird songs from Kess's people, wind sounds from Vorth's species, crystal chimes, and deep liquid bass notes. But the Silence Engine was too powerful. As the combined fleet got closer, their music began to fade. The construct was creating a bubble of absolute quiet that grew larger with every passing minute. "Captain," said Lieutenant Pete Harris from the weapons station, "our music systems are failing. We're losing our defense against their interference signals." That's when Dr. Anderson made his announcement. "Captain Kim, I'm ready to broadcast a harmonious song, but I need every ship in the fleet to transmit it at the same time. Humans and aliens together. Will it work?" Rachel asked. The harmonists designed this song to be sung by multiple species at once. They believed that when all the different voices of the galaxy came together, they could overpower any force that tried to silence them. Rachel looked at the massive silence engine ahead of them and made her decision. "All ships, prepare to broadcast the Harmonist Liberation Song. Every species, every voice, all together." Dr. Anderson uploaded the song to every ship in the fleet. It was unlike any music any of them had ever heard. It had parts for human voices, but also parts specifically written for bird songs, wind sounds, crystal chimes, and dozens of other alien voices, broadcasting in 3, 2, 1, now. The combined voices of 50 different species erupted from the fleet like a musical explosion. The song was complex and beautiful, with every species adding their own unique part to the greater harmony. But it was not the perfect mathematical harmony that the hegemony preferred. It was chaotic and wild, with each voice maintaining its own character while contributing to the whole dot. The effect on the silence engine was immediate and dramatic. The massive construct began to shake and vibrate. Cracks appeared in its perfect metal surface. Most importantly, the bubble of silence that surrounded it began to shrink. "It's working," Rachel shouted. "The song is disrupting their control systems." Throughout the galaxy, other hegemony ships and constructs began to malfunction. The Liberation Song was being broadcast across space, carried by the same communication networks that the hegemony used to control their empire. Every species that heard it began to remember their own music, their own culture, their own freedom. On hundreds of worlds, beings who had been silent for centuries began to sing again. The hegemony's perfect order was cracking like an eggshell, and from inside it, the diverse music of a free galaxy was beginning to emerge. The silence engine, designed to impose quiet across entire star systems, found itself at the center of the loudest, most chaotic, and most beautiful sound in the history of the galaxy. It was the sound of freedom itself, sung by every voice that had ever been silent. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the hegemony's perfect harmony was broken. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station 1, watching ships from 100 different worlds arrive for the first Galactic Music Festival. 5 years had passed since the fall of the silence engine, and the galaxy was finally learning to sing again. "Admiral, the delegation from the Crystal Worlds just arrived," said Commander Amy Rodriguez, who had served with Jake since the first days of humanity's journey to the stars. "They're bringing their entire wind chime orchestra." Jake smiled as he watched the beautiful ship dock with the station. Harmony Station 1 was built from the remains of the silence engine, but instead of creating quiet, it now broadcast music across dozens of star systems. It was the first of many such stations being built throughout the galaxy. "Any word from Earth?" Jake asked. "Sophie Miller sends her regards. She's teaching violin to a group of young hegemony refugees. Apparently, they're natural musicians once. They remember how to be creative." On the planet below, Dr. Lisa Chang was working in a laboratory that looked more like an art studio than a science facility. She was studying something that had never existed before: hybrid music created by multiple species working together. The sounds were unlike anything any single species could have imagined. "The harmonic patterns are fascinating," she told her research partner, Zek-47, who had once been a hegemony enforcer but was now a composer. Zek looked like a large insect with silver wings, but he could create melodies that made humans cry with joy. "When we blend human chaos with Kess's birdsong mathematics, we get something completely new," Lisa continued. "It's organized enough to be beautiful, but random enough to be surprising." Zek made a clicking sound that his translator turned into laughter. My people spent so long trying to be perfect that we forgot perfection is boring. Your human mistakes make our music better. In the rebuilt cities of Earth, the old borders between countries had become less important than the new communities based on musical styles. The Jazz Republic stretched from New Orleans to Tokyo. The Classical Alliance included Vienna, Boston, and New Sydney. The Rock Federation connected Detroit with London and a dozen off-world colonies. Ben Clark was now the official ambassador of underground music, representing musicians from tunnel systems and basement clubs across human space. He was in a meeting with leaders from the percussion worlds trying to organize a galaxy-wide drumming event. The hegemony spent 1,000 years making everything quiet, then said to the assembled musicians, "I think it's time we made some noise that every star system can hear." The former hegemony species were adapting to freedom in different ways. Some, like Kess's bird people, had quickly remembered their old songs and were creating new ones. Others, like the tree beings led by Vorth, were slowly growing back the cultural forest that had been cut down centuries ago. Captain Rachel Kim was now in charge of the Free Fleet, a collection of ships from dozens of worlds that worked together to help newly liberated species remember their cultures. Her ship, the Harmony, was currently orbiting a world that had been silent for 800 years. "Any luck with the locals?" she asked her cultural officer, Dr. Paul Anderson, who had become an expert in helping species recover their lost traditions. "They're starting to remember," Paul said. "Yesterday, one of them hummed for the first time in centuries. Today, 3 more joined in. It's slow, but they're healing." Paul had developed a process for helping former hegemony species recover their creativity. It started with simple sounds, then basic rhythms, and eventually grew into complex music. Each species rediscovered their art in their own way, but they all seemed to follow the same general pattern of awakening. The former hegemony itself had not disappeared completely. Some members of the old collective had chosen to remain together, but now they called themselves the New Harmony. Instead of forcing perfect order on everyone, they worked to help different species find ways to make music together. Ryan Collins, now the chief engineer of the Galactic Communication Network, was working to connect every inhabited world with music-sharing technology. The old hegemony control network had been converted into something completely different, a galaxy-wide radio station where anyone could broadcast their music to anyone else. "The bandwidth requirements are crazy," Ryan told his assistant while adjusting transmitters that could send music across hundreds of light years. "But it's worth it. Every time a new species starts making music again, they share it with everyone else. The galaxy gets a little bit louder every day." Dr. Alex Turner had become the head of the Institute for Chaotic Studies, a new branch of science that studied the creative power of randomness. He was working with alien scientists to understand how chaos and order could work together instead of fighting each other. "The old hegemony thought that chaos was the enemy of order," Alex explained to a group of students from 12 different worlds. "But what we've learned is that chaos and order need each other. Order without chaos is dead. Chaos without order is just noise, but together they make music." On Earth, the cities were full of sounds that had never been heard before. Human children played with alien children, and together they invented games that included both Earth Tag and Keshin flying songs. Schools taught not just human history, but the recovered histories of dozens of species that had almost been forgotten. General Matt Sullivan, now retired from the military, had opened a school for young musicians from all species. Human children learned to whistle like Kess's people, while young bird aliens learned to play human instruments with their 4 arms. "Music is the universal language," Matt often told his students. "Not because everyone makes the same music, but because everyone can learn to appreciate each other's music." The Harmony stations continued to be built throughout the galaxy. Each one was placed at the site of a former hegemony silence facility and converted into a broadcasting station for local music. The stations were connected in a network that could carry songs from one side of the galaxy to the other in minutes. Admiral Morrison was preparing for the opening ceremony of the first Galactic Music Festival when he received a message that made him smile. It was from the edge of explored space, where new species were still being discovered. Another group of beings had heard the galaxy's music and wanted to add their voice to the great song. Amy, add them to the festival lineup. Jake said, the more voices we have, the better the harmony. As the festival began, Jake stood on the observation deck and listened to something that had never existed before in the history of the galaxy. Hundreds of different species were making music together, each one unique, but all part of a greater whole. It was chaotic and organized, loud and soft, ancient and new, all at the same time. The galaxy had learned that the most beautiful music comes not from perfect order or complete chaos, but from the space between them where creativity lives. Every species had something unique to contribute, and together they were creating a song that would never end. In the distance, Jake could see new ships arriving from unexplored regions of space, carrying beings who had heard the galaxy's music and wanted to join in. The song was spreading beyond even the old hegemony's territory, reaching species that had never known either perfect order or complete silence. The galaxy was singing, and it was unstoppable. Jake closed his eyes and listened to the infinite symphony that surrounded him. Somewhere in that music, he could hear the violin that Sophie Miller was teaching to young alien students. He could hear Ben Clark's underground drums, now playing in concert halls across dozens of worlds. He could hear the voices of species that had been silent for centuries, finally free to sing again. The music would go on forever, Jake realized. Every new voice that joined it would make it more complex, more beautiful, more alive. The hegemony had tried to create perfect harmony by making everyone the same. But true harmony, the kind that filled the galaxy now, came from millions of different voices choosing to sing together while remaining themselves. It was the sound of freedom itself, and it would never be silenced again.